Hey, ducklings, welcome back to another episode of Out of Office with me, your work mom, Arlene. And
You work on Jose.
ah, hey, thanks for taking a few minutes to watch our video, to kind of click through, spend some time talking about topics that are important to your early career development, things that pop up as you are navigating what's next for the job that you're in and the career that you want to have. But before we jump in there, Jose, as always, how you been, sir?
Living the dream. How about yourself?
Can't complain. Can't complain. I mean, do you know what? I have gotten to a point where if I don't make it a thing, it's not a thing. So, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
there's
I'll
always
I'll make it a thing. I'll make it a thing.
who we beefing with today, Jose?
Uh, there's a long list of people.
Oh my gosh. So, how's your teams holding up these days?
We're working through it, right? You always have mountains to climb, and you realize there's a lot of good skills that people may have, and there's a lot of good skills that people may not have. I wanted to bring this to your field. I mean, you've been, working about as long as I have in the field. What do you think are some good traits that an employee should be having?
Well, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, both with teams that we have co-managed and some spaces that we've overlapped. And I think one of the things that um, is a little bit of an overlooked, but feels like a little bit of a no-brainer, especially when you're early in your career, is just the intentional act of being present. Like I think that that gets lost, and I don't think that that gets talked about enough because as a manager, it makes a difference when I feel like someone is engaged and they're present. And I think
What are you trying to say? I'm here. I'm here now.
you are here. And this time you're not distracted or focused elsewhere, or multitasking, not to call anybody out, but no, that I think that's probably one that we should dive into because there's different ways to slice
Yeah,
that cake, I think. So yeah.
I think it's a good topic. Why not? I mean, I think it's just a great skill to have, and it's always respectful to be present, to be there for people. So, let's start it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's jump in. So I think when I think about this, and obviously when you and I have talked about this in the past, I think with the space that we live in today where remote and hybrid environments are more and more the norm, it's gone are the days where you come out of school or you start your first job and you have to be on site 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 8, 10 hours, whatever it is, your job is. There's a lot of flexibility these days. And I think that is something that a lot of young folks in their career kind of jump into, but aren't really oriented to the fact that there are different ways to really kind of manage um, how they engage in a remote and a hybrid environment because there's a lot of room to multitask and get distracted or just even check out, right? I mean,
Yeah.
particularly if your job is office based or desk based, what was traditionally once upon a time called a white collar um, environment, it's really not uncommon to operate at a distance from your team or your manager or your company. And so the requirement to even be in a physical like space that is in proximity to anybody outside of you and your stuff, and as well as maybe having the flexibility to just be in kind of co-working or flexible spaces like coffee shops or whatever. I think it is there's really kind of an unspoken norm that has gotten lost in terms of just being physically, I'm sorry, being mentally engaged and mentally present, because there's so many distractions around us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you're remote or in person, you need to understand that there are team members depending on you to do your portion of the work. Doesn't matter how big or small that portion of the work is. Your work matter, your effort matters. If it didn't matter then there wouldn't be a need for someone to be evaluating your work for the company, right? What I always say is make yourself invaluable. Be present, be focused at all times.
Yeah. I think that that is really in line. I mean, and even when we think about the an alternative, right? So say you're not in a traditional kind of desk-based job. Maybe you're in a more physically demanding or hands-on labor intensive, the other side of the white collar, type of environment is maybe the blue collar environment. That, and a lot of things fall in that category, right? Like retail, industrial, hospitality, construction. But point being is that you might be in a situation where you're given an assignment, right? Whether it be a section or something that's remote, and you're just told to just, go forth and execute whatever task or activity. And even in those spaces, you know, you might not necessarily come into contact with anybody from your team, right? Especially if you're out in the field or you have a section of a store or a restaurant. And sometimes, we're tempted to kind of, check our phones and kind of, get distracted by side conversations or whatever. And I think one of the things that when we think about being present, it's like, hey, there's a time and a place for a whole lot of things. And when you are at the job, given responsibility, given a task, um, it's not only important for you to check the list and kind of just do them, but you know, trying to find a way to really look interested or be interested, more than look, but be interested in the work that you are doing, really goes, a long way in terms of your career journey and your experience.
You know what? I always hear about how people say, "Oh, but so and so doesn't have to do this, or someone doesn't have to do that." I always think about it. Never give your superiors any reason to think you may be slacking or not putting your best effort. End of the day, lead by example. You'll never go wrong with that saying. If it all goes horrible, at least you could say you put your best foot forward at all times. It's a reflection of who you are at the end of the day, right? Doesn't matter whether you're a blue collar employee, white collar, does not matter at the end of the day. I think your best impression always goes out there.
Yeah. And I think, to that point, why does it matter, right? I mean, I think, especially sometimes we're in spaces where it's like there's always somebody that's running a little bit late, whether it be on a Zoom call or a meeting or whatever. And sometimes it's a manager, sometimes, it's somebody that's been there for a long time. And, and I think there's sometimes the tendency to think, well, so and so is going to be late anyway, so I can take my time, or so and so, is always dialing in or, jumping in from a really noisy background or whatever, and nobody really cares. And I would say it's probably not a good look for them, but it's definitely not a good look for you because right, wrong, or indifferent, as someone who is young or new in their role and in their career journey, you just don't get a lot of passes the same way that someone in a more senior role or a more tenured space would get. And again, it doesn't make it right that, they're potentially jumping in a little bit later, or they seem kind of distracted. But I would say that oftentimes there are managers or leaders or somebody who has been in a more tenured role. They're probably juggling a lot of things. And that's the reason why they are a little bit tardy on things, or there's a little bit of a delayed response, which again doesn't mean that that should be your example, but it also is an indicator that, if anything, you consistently showing up and being present, being engaged, being on time, being a little early, like one of our former, videos, really does make a difference in terms of how you're perceived in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, to me, those are small actions that lead up to bigger things, right? And they're small habits. And I always say that, small actions can become bad habits if you let them, if they just get out of control. So instead, I try to think about building good habits, right? Show up early, be on time, be courteous to your team members, and don't make their jobs harder. I mean, our jobs are hard enough on a daily basis, right? Schedule your time so that you know where you can find those few moments to let your mind wander, and you can check your phone, or go to the store, or do whatever you have to do. Schedule small things such as lunch, checking your emails, so that you can be more purposeful with your day. So that when you're in that important meeting, you're there 100%, and you're not somewhere else, and your mind's not wandering, or you're not trying to multitask. Because let's be realistic, multitasking is that's not for everyone, and I don't think most people can do it well.
Yeah, well, that's right. And or they think that they're really being sly and discreet about it, but they're not. Like you're they don't have a great poker face, or they don't really have, their on button, or their spidey sense isn't exactly fine-tuned, so that when they are being called out on something, they are completely, taken by surprise or whatever. But I think to your point, those are some really great, like, tips or some hints. I mean, there are plenty of things that you could put into, consideration for how to be better at being engaged and present. I mean, you know, work on one of your favorite, um, tips, if you will, or kind of um, insights, is really kind of creating and having a plan the night before. I mean, there's nothing like game planning, really kind of what your day or your week looks like. It helps with a whole lot of things. One, what are your priorities for the day or the week? How do you plan for any potential distractions? I mean, I think that you're such a great advocate and example, role model for that, because this is why you're our ace when it comes to all things program and project. But I think other things to kind of think about, like if you are, lucky enough to be able to kind of work from home, there's a difference between just working in chaos or versus working in a dedicated space. Like once upon a time when I was moving, like I had to work from my kitchen, and that was a whole like host of distractions where I'm just like, I'm not even feeling snacky, but I'm in the kitchen, so why not? And that just opens the door. So if you can create a dedicated space, whether it be each corner of your bedroom, place in your living room or whatever, and then, and then kind of get to whatever it is that you need to do. That way you can kind of, make sure that you're in work mode, at least for that time that you're focusing. There's so much that, that can be a distraction. And then even things like your phone, right? To your point, put your phone away. Like, if you're in an environment where you don't have to be on the phone, like if you're on the floor, in the restaurant, or if you are out in the field, on a construction site or whatever, probably shouldn't be on a phone anyway. So, so get
Yeah.
it out of, immediate reach. Barring an emergency, you shouldn't be on it. And that way you're not distracted by it. So, but there's a whole laundry list, and I know you have always got some great thoughts about how to tactically be better about it. So,
Yeah, the one of the things that I always think about is like meetings, right? Like, there's just so many meetings on our calendars, and it, you're not going to find enough time to do the things you need to do, right? So when scheduling meetings, I always want to make sure that these meetings are necessary. Create agendas for these meetings so that everyone can come prepared to talk about that specific topic. Not every other. We're not going to talk about everything under the sun. Do an audit every once in a while about the meetings that you have. So once every quarter or so, just to make sure that any standing meetings that you have are absolutely necessary. Um, ask what your role is in a meeting. If it's for informational purposes, then maybe consider an email instead of a meeting. And I know that, oh, that just sounds horrible even saying it out loud, but sometimes it's a necessity. Cut out as many distractions as you possibly can from your surroundings, as you were talking about earlier about being in the kitchen, so that you can focus on the conversations that you're having. Don't multitask. Your human brain is actually really poor at multitasking. Trust me, it just does not work well. Your capacity to do multiple things starts to diminish the more you add to your plate. Focus on one thing at a time so you can be the best version of yourself that you can. Give it all your attention. Your team deserves the best version of you. Just think about that. And if you use that as your North Star, I think that changes everything else for you.
Yeah. I love everything that you just said because I think, one of the things that that made me chuckle a little bit is, you know, I was having a conversation with someone not too long ago, and we were talking about how fast time flies. And when you're a kid, when you're younger, all you want to do is get there. You just want to, you want to hurry up and grow up. You want to hurry up and do, all the things, or whatever. And then you become an adult and, and maybe not so much if you're in your 20s or your early 30s, but when you start hitting, your 40s and your 50s or whatever, all you want is for time to slow down. And I say that because it's the same with, kind of work. It's like, I think sometimes, folks are such in a hurry to kind of, you know, be, you know, a multitasker and overly, overly assert themselves in places when they really haven't had the time to really kind of enjoy kind of acclimating and learning and getting to know the job and really being, intentional about how they really grow into the space that they're afforded. And so I say all of that because it's just like, don't be in such a hurry to, to sign up for all the things and, engage in all the things. And then, oh, by the way, you're distracted by, stuff that's going on in your personal life, that you're looking at your phone or whatever. There is something to be said about slow and intentional and present and engaged. It'll serve you well at work and it'll serve you well in the long run. So I don't know, take it from a couple of folks who who are trying to manage and slow down time in many spaces. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
no, not that earlier conversation that we had at all. So so all right. I think we did a good job on this. So what do you
Time to take
think?
us home.
I think
It's time
so.
to go take us home now. So, all right. Well, let's take to our takeaways. So, try not to lose focus of where your job is based. People are depending on you to do your job, so focus on it. Never give people any reason to doubt your effort. That's really, really important. If you're putting 100% effort, you don't got to look over your shoulder about anything. Strive to pick up good habits and continue to develop them over time. This is a slow process and it's something that you build over time. It's like going to the gym. Not all roles are created equal, and you will not be afforded the same leeway as others, so be patient about that. Be purposeful with your day and your actions. If you're struggling, develop a plan and schedule your activities and tasks throughout the day to help you stay focused. And ultimately, cut out as many distractions as you possibly can from around you and be the best version of yourself.
Thank you, Workunk. As always, your advice is sound and ace. And I think just to kind of close us out, I think if I were to wrap us up, first, I think I would leave you with the notion that being present can mean physically present, but more importantly, it means minimizing any distractions so that you stay engaged and so that you are fully present and cognizant and intentional about the work that you have been asked to do and the work that you signed up to do. Second thing I would say is that fair or not, you don't necessarily get the same passes that maybe some of your managers or your leads or even some of your more tenured coworkers would get with regard to multitasking or being a little bit tardy and maybe some not so great habits that you're observing. You just don't necessarily get that pass when you're early in your career. And if anything, think about things that could potentially be perceived as career limiting in the future. So, and I think the last thing that I would say is that if you can't rewire some of those habits, understanding the consequences of those, the career limiting actions, might actually be a sign that it's time for you to consider a job switch, and that's okay, right? I mean, sometimes you've just kind of outgrown a space, or you realize that it was never for you, and that's probably why you're either bored or distracted, or you just don't want to be there. So that's another conversation, another video for a different time. But with that said, more importantly, it's time to go live your life and join us on the next one. So, on behalf of me, your work mom, and
And you work on.
thanks. And we will see you on the next one.